Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. I want to talk to you about civil rights. You know what civil rights are? Well, we live now at the end of 2019. We're well into the 21st century, and definitions of words have changed. Civil rights now is the freedom to be or to act in what the Bible would call lascivious ways, without criticism and without limitation. That's my civil right. Democrats who are famously booed, who do famously boo at the mention of God in their party platform, have now condemned, quote, religious liberty, end of quote, and at the same time praise the religiously, quote, unaffiliated, end of quote. The Washington Examiner reported the Democrat National Committee approved a resolution taking aim at religious liberty. At a summer meeting this summer, 2019, in San Francisco, the Democrat National Committee adopted a resolution that emboldens and exalts the non-religious. Now, there have always been so-called non-religious people in America. That's not a new thing. We've lived next door to them. We've worked alongside them. We've picnicked with them, vacationed with them, ate with them. It has always been a live and let live relationship. So what changed? Well, the left would have you believe that the religiously oriented have suddenly risen up against the non-religious in a purely spiteful and arbitrary way. You don't believe that? Listen to them. Quote, the non-religious have often been subjected to unfair bias and exclusion in American society, particularly in the areas of politics and policy making, where assumptions of religiosity have long predominated, end of quote. So, whereas those most loudly claiming their morals, values, and patriotism must be defined by their particular religious views, have used those religious views with misplaced claims of religious liberty to justify public policy that has threatened the civil rights and liberties of many Americans, including but not limited to the LGBT community, women, and ethnic and religious, non-religious minorities. So, be it hereby resolved that the Democratic, they say Democratic and there's nothing democratic about them, they mean Democrat National Committee recognizes, one, the value, ethical soundness, and importance of the religiously unaffiliated demographic, a group of Americans who contribute in innumerable ways to the arts, sciences, medicine, business, law, the military, their communities, the success of the party, and prosperity of the nation. And two, that religiously unaffiliated Americans are a group that, as much as any other, advocates for rational public policy based on sound science and universal humanistic values and should be represented, included, and heard in the party. This is the Secular Coalition of America embracing this statement. Well, World News Daily recently reported that in June, the Democrat National Committee, in apparent acknowledgement of the party, that the party has a God problem, hired a religious outrage director. They go on to explain how, quote, the religiously unaffiliated demographic, that's their name for the Democrats, a demographic that has nothing to do with anything important here, has tripled in the last 2 decades, now representing 25% of the overall American population and 35% of those under the age of 30. Did you hear that? 25% of Americans, up from 12% in just the last 20 years, call themselves Democrats. 35% of that 25% are under 30. The assumption is that if you are not religious, you agree with abortion on demand, gender bending, and all things sexually graphic. It's not true, by the way. And what do they mean about the non-religious anyway? They've already labeled humanism a religion. This is convoluted rationality here, nothing more than a power grab. Labeling a segment of society, then pretending to defend and protect them against what? Well, against decency, against the rule of law, against physical destruction. That's what homosexuality is, by the way. Against moral decay. How dare we set out to try to stop them from doing such a thing? Now, no nation is comprised by a completely harmonious population. People are different. And in America, they're allowed to be different. There are no laws against stupidity. There's no laws basically against immorality as long as it doesn't flow out into something unlawful in the statute. The law merely says, you can't do these things in public. Or some of these things are destructive to human life. Or when your immorality threatens to destroy society, you got to stop. Well, like what? Well, like sexual promiscuity as a normal exercise that is destructive to society. It's unhealthy. It's physically dangerous. It's not good for the kids. Give me something that's good for. Well, it makes me feel good. Yeah, okay. So is an ice cream soda. Drugs that render you dangerous to other people. Drugs that change your biological makeup in very destructive ways. Things that happen to drug users that now we have to pay for in hospitals, therapies, medications, rehabilitations, and so forth. Not to mention putting them up in housing and feeding them, because now they're practically vegetables. They can't function. You see, life choices have consequences. And homosexual couples do not reproduce. The child born to such a couple is either related only to one, or very often to none of his or her family members. How is that helpful? And what's that mean to society? Well, we really don't know, do we? We're still learning. The list is long. In science, we're taught that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Well, in social experimentation, the same thing is true. It's one thing for a nation to have citizens willing to push the boundaries. It's quite another for a nation to legitimize that sort of chaos and destruction. But that's now what's being touted as sharing the Democrat Party's values. End of quote. The laws of any nation ought to be designed in such a way as to protect their citizens, and very often to protect citizens against themselves. These people publicly declare, quote, non-religious Americans want to work with people of all faiths to build an effective government that serves and protects all our rights equally. That's a new definition of rights. Rights that ignore the obvious consequences, the consequences to society at large. These are people who want to ensure that policy is driven by science and evidence, not sectarian beliefs, code for Christianity. And it all sounds very noble until you look at how these people live. and you watch to see what their policies are producing. This is a group of people, and I'm sure within this group of left-leaning, whatever you want to do is okay with me kind of people, there's some really nice people who are very productive. But we don't meet them. We don't see them on television, in the movies. We don't hear them online in the things that's going on. We hear all this noise. This noise that's evil, destructive of morality, destructive of the next generation of children coming up. Children who don't even get a chance to rise out of their puberty and come to some stable place before they can decide for themselves whether they want to throw it all away. They're taking guns at 14, 15, 16 years of age to school to kill people. They're getting permission from their parents to change their gender, which is not possible, by the way. Boys wanting to live like girls, girls wanting to live like boys. And the studies that are done still show that in the long haul, the vast majority of them are not happy. But we want everybody to feel good. I don't. I want everybody to be responsible. Because I got to go out there with my car and drive on the highway with people. And a growing number of these people are not caring what they do. The accident rates go up. Here in South Carolina, we kill 1,000 people a year on the highway. And they do everything they can think of to stop it. But you can't stop stupid. And you can't stop them from driving. Now we have drugs. And we have other things going on. You pull up alongside of people with their radio blasting. They've got sophisticated sound systems in those cars so that those noises are much louder than anything you have ever imagined. And they're sitting in the middle of that, driving down the street. Oh, they can pay attention while that's banging in their head, can't they? And they're smoking what? You've driven behind these people, you see the car suddenly fill with smoke. First time I saw that, I thought the place was on fire. No, that's those new little doodads that are in the news today, killing people with cancer. Vaping creates a huge amount of smoke. Can you see through that smoke while you're driving? I don't know. It is a far different world. And at the rate we're going and the changes that we're making and the direction those changes are taking us, we're not going to last much longer. Some of us are old. I know. But we're getting out. You got to deal with it. What are you going to do?